Hi, sorry it cut off again. So, yeah, I had been given this medication and I took it, you know, and for me that was a devastating low moment. But what happened next, I mean, the story gets so out of control and it just goes so far, but this was the moment that really crystallized my, you know, the point of no return, not being able to come back from this. 'Cause they were just extremely high doses. In my mind, they're criminal doses. I think these medications should be illegal. I think the person who prescribed them to me should be in jail. They are illegal to prescribe benzos anymore in Europe, more than 10 days. You are not supposed to prescribe them. And these doses were astronomical. And this industry, it's just gotten out of hand. I don't want to go on a rant about the pharmaceutical industry, but I was handed a death sentence with a newborn baby in my arms. And, you know, it did help me. I will admit, when I took that dose of that tranquilizer, I did curb my anxiety. Okay, so it did override it. I felt completely out of it. I didn't really know who I was anymore. I felt calm, a strange sense of calm, yet everything felt wrong inside myself. I felt still that impending sense of doom everywhere. Felt like I was covered in a thick black cloud, and I just knew that I could not stay on these medications, that they were evil. There's no other way to say it. So I was there for 3 weeks taking these medications and doing this program daily until I was discharged. Before I left, I asked the doctor, and I should say I instinctively knew right from the very first day. I said, I need to stop breastfeeding. He said, no, it'll be fine. But I knew, Lisa, you've got to stop breastfeeding. So I did. And that was very traumatic because my baby, who had been breastfeeding up till that point, we had to stop within a day. And I was trying to bottle feed her. I didn't really know what was going on. I didn't know who I was anymore. This eerie sensation was floating everywhere, all through me. I had this panic that yet it was controlled. It was like being pushed and tranquilized, drugged away. But I was not well, and I had to stop. You know, the bond and the destruction with my baby. I feel to this day just brokenhearted about how I had to stop, but I knew I had to for her. And it was devastating holding my baby, trying to bottle feed it and realizing, like, how did I get here? What is happening? Like, I just can't believe that you go from a normally functioning person to this within a few days, you know, taking these drugs and having to stop breastfeeding your child and, you know, in a facility, and it just, I mean, crazy stuff, right? Crazy stuff. Anyways, so before I left, I said, are these addictive? And he said, well, the Ativan, the benzodiazepine could be. None of this was informed consent. Let me tell you, they did not open the pamphlet. They did not tell me the list of side effects that I could experience, and they did not tell me what could happen. So this was not informed consent. You know, this was a bullied situation, and me being desperate and needing help. And this doctor spoke to me for less than 10 minutes before he prescribed this and essentially ruined my life. So, am I pissed about it? Yeah, I'm pissed about it, but I have to let that anger go because it doesn't serve me moving forward. But I do think that what is happening, not just with me, but with so many people around the world, is criminal, and it needs to stop. Okay, so I left, I came home, and he said, you'll want to taper off that then. If you feel like you can come off that one, that's the one that's the most addictive. So go ahead and taper off 0.5 milligram each week or each 2 weeks until you're done. Okay, anybody who knows, now that I know, and now that I've been on forums and been in contact with many doctors and specialists who taper people off benzodiazepines, like, you are coming down like point percent over months and months, right? So you are not like coming down 0.5 milligram every week. Anyway, so what I did was I came off 0.5 milligram every 10 days from 3 milligrams until I was down to 0. So this took about 2 months. Okay, so I went from 3 milligrams down to 0 in 2 months, which is essentially a cold turkey, but a little slower, right? And as I was coming off of it, my symptoms were increasing. My anxiety was exploding through the roof. I was restless. I was pacing around, like almost like I was manic. And I was thinking, it's okay. I'm going to be off them soon. I'll be off them soon. Everything's going to stabilize when I get off them, right? So I'm coming down. And then when I got off them, things weren't better. So I thought, well, I better start coming off the antidepressant because I knew it was a lot. I knew that it was causing me major symptoms, almost like I was surrounded in death and the devil. It was very eerie. And I knew I had to come off it. And so I thought, well, I came off that in 2 months. That took too long. I better just get off this stuff. So I went from 200 milligrams down to 100 milligrams the next day, and then down to 50, and then down to 25, and then off, all within 5 days. I was off the drugs, which is a cold turkey at the highest prescribable dose. So I basically cold turkeyed the drugs, and I was complete disaster. And I can remember this, I think it was about 48 hours, it was about 2 days after I'd finished my last dose of the medication. And I can still remember the exact moment when it was like, I mean, my symptoms were already at a 10 out of 10 on a scale of, can I withstand this or not? But I thought, well, now that I'm off the drugs, surely it's all going to start to go away because the drugs have been doing this to me. But there was a moment right after I came off the drugs where this cold turkey moment where I actually, and I don't like to talk about this because this is a shameful subject. It's a shameful subject. People don't understand it. They think that you are a mental patient, that you're making it up, that people are scared of what they don't understand. But let me tell you, I was a normal, functioning, amazing, wonderful, strong, funny, loving, caring human being. These drugs are poison, and they poisoned me, and they poisoned me and gave me all these, not even side effects. You can't call them side effects. They were effects, major effects that completely destroyed my life. The moment that I will never forget is right after coming off the drugs. Within 48 hours, there was a moment, and I remember where I was. I remember what I was standing. I was already at a 10 out of 10 on my threshold of symptoms and what I could withstand, and thinking I can't do this for much longer. I sure hope coming off the drugs stabilizes me soon. Where I actually literally felt myself falling into a darkness. I saw the gates of hell open up, and I felt myself being kicked inside, and the doors shut behind me. Okay, this sounds like a movie, like from the worst possible nightmare movie that you can imagine, and I wish it was, but it was absolutely 100% real life. And from that moment forward, my entire central nervous system melted, completely shut down from head to toe. I had over 200 symptoms ranging from, I intended when I did this video to tell you all my symptoms one by one, but I just think that's much too traumatic to go through at this point. Let me just say I had 200 symptoms. They were all life-threatening symptoms, from lightning bolts being cascaded into my brain every 10 seconds, jolting me, head to toe burning like I was had gasoline poured on me and someone lit a match, head to toe, nervous system shut down. So this is head to toe, mental, physical. I could feel the devil crawling through my veins. I could hear voices. I was in complete psychosis. I could not do anything. I couldn't speak. I was debilitated beyond words, and all I could do was cry and scream. But I knew there was a part of me, and this is how I know that psychiatric meds, it's like, I don't know if anyone has ever done, cocaine or heroin or acid or had a trip of mushrooms or anything like that, but the way they describe that is like basically you're chemically induced on this trip. That was what was happening for me. I was in the worst possible trip that a human being could happen. My central nervous system, my brain, my nerves, my mitochondria, my cells, each thing basically shut off. One by one, I had hundreds and hundreds of mental symptoms ranging from psychosis to continual second by second, millisecond by millisecond suicidal ideation thoughts, and I was literally trapped in the pits of hell. The symptoms that I endured, from physical to mental, I can only describe as being naked, being gassed in the chambers at Auschwitz. I can only describe them like being naked and chained up as a prisoner of war and being beaten to death and tortured alive in your own body. And so I don't like to talk about the symptoms because it was a world that I'm not sure how I made out of it alive. No human being really could make it out alive. I think my strong determination and my will and I had no sense of who I was anymore, but I could feel my soul. I could feel the center of me, my soul, telling me that I was still here, to keep going, to not give up, and that my story could not end like this. And that's basically all I had left of my physical body, my emotional body, and my spiritual body, was a small voice, deep, 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 deep under hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of symptoms, telling me that I was still there and to keep going. I thought, how long could it be? How long could this go on? How long could the withdrawal last? You've seen the videos of people coming off heroin, I'm sure, locked in rooms, screaming, thrashing around on the floor. That was like what this was like. And it lasted day after day, minute after minute, second after second. It was a force that no human being could withstand. But I kept going because I had kids, and I knew that I had to make it out alive to tell this story. And I knew something just told me to keep going, even though I wanted to kill myself thousands and thousands of times a day. Every second of every day, I wanted to die because the pain was so intense. My nervous system was on fire head to toe, and I didn't think I'd ever function again. And I made it 6 months. I made it 6 months, day after day, with no improvements, hour after hour, minute after minute. And I just could not believe how long this was going. Why wasn't things getting better? The drugs were surely out of my system. How could this still be going on? And that's when I did research and found out that I am not an anomaly. There are hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of people who this has happened to. I was a worst case scenario. I was probably one of the worst of the very worst. Yet there are thousands and thousands of people who have had their lives ripped from them, from these medications. There are so many people out there crying out for help, and nobody listens. Nobody helps them. Nobody believes them. And furthermore, there's nothing anybody can do. The doctors have no answer for this. The pharmaceutical companies who make these drugs do not have a remedy. That's why I think that this is criminal. I made it 6 months until I realized what had happened to me, and I found a group of people who told me what had happened, how long the side effects from these drugs and this withdrawal can go on, and that I needed to basically take their supplements, updose on the drugs, get back on them, and taper off slowly. So I trusted this organization. It was, I don't want to say the company name. Oh, I might as well. They're called Point of No Return, and they're a group of great people who I should have stayed off. I shouldn't have gone back on, but in the end, I trusted a doctor with their organization to put me back on the drugs after much talking and much begging. Do you promise this will help? Do you promise this will help? Will this slow taper? So I was meant to go back on and slow taper down over a period of 10 months so that I could come off it slowly, so that because the cold turkey had ruined my nervous system, and I really at this point would have rather been dead, and I lasted about as long as I humanly thought I possibly could last. And so with no other hope and no other help, I decided, okay, I'm gonna risk it. I'm gonna go back on. Which one am I gonna do? I'm not gonna go back on the antidepressant. I'll go back on the benzodiazepine. I had to go back on at the dose that the recommendation was that I go back on the dose. I stabilize, and once I stabilize, I come off very, 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 very slowly off the course of a year, so that my nervous system has a chance to come off slowly and balance out. But what happened next was even worse. I couldn't stabilize at my current dose. I had to keep going up higher, 3.2, 3.5, 3.8. So now I'm up to 4 milligrams. And I said, like, what is the plan to this expert, this specialist? I can't keep going up. I'll never get off this. I'm going to overdose. I'm going to die. And he said, well, you have to stabilize. You have to keep going up until you stabilize, and then we'll bring you down. And I knew that I would die. So there I was, stuck back on almost 4 milligrams at this point, and still couldn't stabilize. I had updosed myself. Things were a nightmare. My symptoms were brutal. I knew I had to come off, so I decided I would have to come off this. I had to leave my family, leave my children, leave everybody that I knew, and in order to try to save my own life, I checked into a rehab clinic that was going to help me naturally come off these drugs and detox me in the process, and I had to leave everybody that I knew. My husband flew me there. I was dropped off in the middle of the night, signed in, and I was there for 10 weeks. I'm just going to leave it here because the next experience was so traumatic. It's more traumatic, and brings us to the last part of my story before the healing phase. I will tell it later.